President Barrow has inaugurated 70 new buses to enhance public transportation. South Africa's prolonged energy crisis impedes the country's construction sector. And the British National has donated 2 brand new ambulances to the Sehed Tahimi Imre Munyas Clinic of Kunkujen, Ketia. But this and more coming your way on The World Today. Hello, this is Eyeafrica TV and you are watching The World Today News Bulletin coming to you live from our studios in Banjul. Many thanks for joining us. I am Amadou Kante and now the news in details. And we begin this news bulletin with some transportation matters because President Adama Barrow on Wednesday presided over the commissioning of 70 buses at a brief ceremony held at the Makati Square in Banjul. 11 out of the 70 new buses are designated as school buses transporting students to and far from school. Now, the Gambian leader said the buses will not only ease mobility challenges, but also create employment for many people in the country. Mariama Cham tells us more of that in this report.
The provision of the 11 new buses as an addition to the buses allocated for school transportation will help mitigate the persistent struggles students continue to face and also ensure easy and reliable transportation for school children in the country. On a daily basis, hundreds of students rely on school buses to transport them safely to and from school, but most of them would usually turn on the public commercial transport system due to the inadequate availability of buses. Speaking on the significance of the newly launched buses, Sidi Kanye, the general manager of the Gambia Transport Service Company, said the buses are a means of easing long-standing transportation challenges in the Gambia. The GTSC bus also highlights the operational plan for the buses in different parts of the country.
In operating this new fleet, we plan to double our current coverage in both urban and rural Gambia. This will include our express services as well as the ordinary services. We will be flying more than 60 routes countrywide, and it is pleasing to note that half of the 60 routes will be new ones, and including Bambali to Bara, Bustown to Farafenye, Bajakunda to Koina, Brikama to Gunjur via Sifo, Jara Sukun to Kanifing, Brikamaba to Basse, Kiankarantaba to Kanifing, Janjambure to Kanifing, Faraba Banta to Kanifing, to name a few. In fact, we will be serving almost all the major towns and villages in the country, especially those with paved motorable roads.
One of the key government partners in the successful purchasing of the buses TK Exports, its representative said reliable and effective transportation has the potential of attracting investors and other national opportunities for the country.
The availability of reliable transportation services is essential in attracting investors, creating job opportunities, and improving the quality of life of all citizens. As we continue to work towards the development of the Gambia, I want to appeal to stakeholders to support this initiative fully. I also call on the GTSC to observe timely maintenance and service to this new fleet and existing buses to ensure longevity.
Meanwhile, President Adama Barrow describes the arrival of these buses as not accidental, but timely to complement the infrastructural upgrading of the roads and construction of new ones.
With this in view, the deployment of the new buses will complement the current road transport operations of the country. As such, I am proud to observe that this is one of the largest fleets of buses ever acquired in the history of public transport on Gambian soil. Besides easing movement, this scheme has the potential to employ more than 100 Gambians. Ladies and gentlemen, the quality and standard specification of these latest bosses clearly manifests my government resolve to permanently address the public transport challenges confronting us, which include the growing traffic congestion experienced in the Greater Banjul area.
The Gambian leader further advised the people tasked with the responsibility of the buses to work diligence to ensure proper upkeeping of the buses. He observed that with the proper usage and fair distribution of labor, the buses will create youth employment ranging from drivers, conductors, car maintenance and other related jobs. Presided over by the President, the commissioning of the buses at Makati Square was also witnessed by cabinet ministers, National Assembly members and other relevant stakeholders within the transportation sector. Reporting for Eyeafrica News, I am Yahya Jammeh.
Now, moving on, first clashes have intensified between DR Congo forces and the M23 rebels in the eastern part of the country after a few weeks of ceasefire. Now, the deployed regional Eastern African regional forces in the country have managed to push back the rebels in some of their occupied areas. Authorities of the Central African nations have continued to blame Rwanda for the prevailing situation for allegedly supporting the M23 rebels. Now, let's have more details of that in this report.
Gunfire in Kibumba town in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Fighting broke out between M23 rebels and Congolese forces several weeks after the guns fell silent. Both sides accuse each other of provoking the latest clashes. Last week, the M23 rebels began withdrawing from areas they captured ahead of military deployments by the East African Regional Force.
We have demonstrated our willingness to respect the ceasefire, but the problem is coming from the side of the DRC government. They are the ones who always violate the ceasefire.
The DRC government says it respects the ceasefire but blames Rwanda for escalating the conflict.
The main question now is about Rwanda, because you know Rwanda is supporting M23, now it's clear, and they are continuing to do so. We hope that in different processes we are, especially the Rwanda processes with the Nairobi processes, we will find a way to solve the issue.
The Rwandan government has repeatedly denied backing the M23 rebels. The rebels were supposed to withdraw from all occupied areas by March 30th, but remain in control of several towns.
There are procedures for the rebels to withdraw from the areas. We said that it must be orderly and sequenced. We don't want any harm caused to the civilian population.
Some security analysts in the DRC are pessimistic about the regional efforts to restore peace.
Katika East Africa community,
the East African community is a trade bloc with member states that have been hostile to the DRC. When the leaders meet to discuss ways of resolving the security crisis in the East, they do so while Rwanda and Uganda are in attendance. Those countries can sabotage the efforts of restoring peace by informing the rebels of the planned military operations.
The M23 says it's fighting to protect the Tutsi community in eastern DRC from attacks by militia groups allied to the Congolese government. The latest fighting in eastern DRC has happened despite a regional ceasefire deal. Troops from Burundi, Kenya, Uganda and South Sudan have been deployed to oversee the withdrawal of the rebels from occupied areas, but their mandate doesn't allow them to fight the rebels, and that has annoyed many Congolese citizens yearning for an end to the conflict.
Now, elsewhere in the African continent, amid the impact of the global economic crisis, Egypt has increased its food and fuel subsidies as part of government-initiated measures to minimize the public suffering. The latest subsidy increment was captured in the country's national fiscal budget following a cabinet approval. Now, despite the state-initiated measures to cope the rising cost of living and high inflation, some citizens are still demanding more from the authorities. Here's more details of that in this report.
The Egyptian cabinet has approved the state budget for fiscal year 2023-2024, which begins in July till mid-2024. The newly released draft budget focuses on social welfare programs to protect its vulnerable population. Egyptians are reeling from the fallout from the conflict in Eastern Europe, which has led to record inflation rates, high external debt levels, and a currency that has been devalued 3 times in the last year, leading to a surge in prices. The 2023-2024 fiscal budget saw an increase in food subsidies by 20%, while energy subsidies jumped by 24%. Meanwhile, social welfare programs were allocated an extra 24%, and salaries and pensions are expected to climb by 15%.
If we look at the food and energy subsidies alone, they account for 10% of the total budget, and there is an increase in subsidies despite the budget deficit. Expenses are to be covered from expected high revenues of $100 billion in the next fiscal year from tourism, remittances from Egyptians abroad, and exports, which are gradually increasing.
Mohammed Atman, a father of 3 children, is shopping for his family in Egypt's capital. He says more subsidies are still needed at these tough times.
I benefit from the subsidies. Without them, I won't survive because my salary is very low. Subsidies cover part of the expenses such as buying bread, which is very important, but the subsidies are still not enough to cover the rest of our expenses.
The government has also established outlets countrywide to sell food and basic goods that lower the market price to support the predominantly poor population from the surging cost of living, which rose to a new high of 32.7% in March.
The real solution to inflation hikes, I believe, is to increase production and reduce consumption. The government is focusing on expenditure on investment projects to increase production, revenue, and employment opportunities. Secondly, to stop the devaluation of the pound, we have to increase exports because currently our imports are much higher than exports.
Cutting import bills will reduce the demand on hard currency and thus sustain the Egyptian pound from further slumps.
Experts say these issues must be addressed at a faster pace. Otherwise, inflation hikes and the devaluation of the Egyptian pound will continue to be a headache every year.
That economic-related report is coming from the Egyptian capital, Cairo. You're watching the World Today News Bulletin on Eyeafrica TV, coming to you live from our studios in Banjul. And let's now take a break and come back shortly. Stay tuned, there's more coming ahead.
Do you want an affordable yet exquisite home or a service plot from TAF, but do not know how to go about it? Worry no more. Let me walk you through the process. 1. Book a viewing with us. 2. Agree on a payment plan you are comfortable with. 3. Fill out a reservation form. 4. Take your time to review, ask questions, and when satisfied, you can proceed by signing our sale agreement. And 5. Pay a deposit and sale is confirmed. From there, you can walk into your home and enjoy the real TAF experience, or still be a proud owner of a service plot from us. It's that simple. Book a viewing today. For more information, please call 376-2333 or 776-2333.
Welcome back. This is Eyeafrica TV and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin. And once again, many thanks for joining us. Let's now look at the rest of the stories. Now, this Tahimi Ibrahim Clinic and Dara of Kunkujan Ketia in the West Coast region on Wednesday received 2 brand new ambulances from a British national, Datin Hurden. Now, Datin, who lost his father during the peak of the COVID-19 in the Gambia, brings the 2 ambulances for the health clinic that supported his father during the time of his need. Now, he expresses gratitude to the people of the community for their good gesture toward his late father and promises to support them in any form he could. Yahya Jammeh again has more details of that in this report.
Sinthiou Alhaji and the surrounding villages in terms of easy transportation of people with severe health conditions needing emergency support. It is said that one good turn deserves another, which encouraged Durton Hayden, a British national who lost his father at the health clinic during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in the Gambia. He brought the 2 ambulances to the clinic as a way of giving back to the community that supported his late father during his time of need. To say thank you to the community for supporting their own until his demise. Durton Hayden said he was inspired by the care and support the health center rendered to his father until his demise. He said his team traveled hours and days to get to the Gambia just to deliver these ambulances to the people.
We thank Fatu for the help she gave my father, and we will try to help the community the best we can, but we need to know from you what you want from us. So we would like to speak to the elders later on, and we discuss what the clinic needs and what we can do to help. Father was Chris. You may remember him. He died here 2 years ago. Myself and my wife, we come from Wales, which is in the UK. Donald and Charlie, they come from Scotland. We travelled down with 2 cars. We spent 40 hours at sea on boats and 5,000 kilometers on cars driving on the roads. In 10 days of driving and 4 days on boats or rest days.
Dr. Ba, a gynecologist and the medical doctor at the health facility, said the hospital provides health services to more than 5 villages where people frequently receive their medical treatment.
Here to care for the poor, for the needy, and whoever comes to our clinic so that we can give him basic medical attention that is needed in this community. Basically, in this community, we covering almost for more than 5 villages around. That's Kunkujang, and then the community takes it's almost how the Alcalde says it's almost about 100,000 populates that we are covering for, including boarding schools, which are Quranic boarding schools that teaches the Quran. All of them that comes here, and then we see them, we treat them, and free of charge.
Alhaji Salif Sise, the Alcalde of Sinthiou Alhaji, expresses gratitude to the donors, describing them as exemplary persons, and the donated ambulance will greatly serve the entire community of Sinthiou Alhaji.
Am nañ kontaan bu mag.
He says we are very happy.
Comme façon ñi ñu toog fi ci suñ kanam.
For you, the honorable guest, to be here today.
Ndax am ngeen njëriñ boo xam ne da ngeen ko andil suñu community bi.
Because you people are very useful to the community.
Ndax ngir dimbal bu nga xam ne ñu ngi ñu ko yéene pour defal ñu ko.
Which is a big help, and you desire to do it for us, and we appreciate it.
Kontaan nañ ci loolu torop.
We really appreciate it.
Ndax gis ngeen diggante tali bi ba egsi fii.
From the tarmac or highway to here.
Jigéen bu biir bu ñu teg ci sareet andi ko fii.
Every pregnant woman, if he is carried with a donkey cart or a horse cart.
Wala nga jëlee ko fi ak sareet yóbbu ko ci tali bi.
Or from here to the highway.
Loolu nekk na coono bu mag.
For labor is a very, very difficult thing.
So leen demee nag ba dugal seen loxo.
If you put your hands in this.
Kon ñun community bi danañ leen wax ne jërë ngeen jëf.
In order to ease or to facilitate that activity, the community is saying thank you, people.
The residents of Sinthiou Alhaji and the satellite communities also express gratitude and happiness to the sponsors. According to them, the gesture will go a long way to address some of the health challenges the communities have been facing, including the lack of ambulances. The donors, however, promise to do their utmost best to keep helping the community, as long as they are aware of the challenges the health facility and the community is faced with. Reporting for Eyeafrica News, I am Mariama Cham.
And from the report there by Mariama Cham, on to our final story now, because South Africa's construction sector is the latest. Of course, the latest industry that has been impacted by the adverse effects of the persistent electricity crisis in the country. Now, over 90 construction companies in the Rambut nation had been closed by the end of 2022, thanks to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in a massive job loss. Now, however, the developers are now initiating measures to mitigate the effects of the prevailing energy crisis. And here's more details of that in this report.
The South African construction industry is an important contributor to GDP, but the last decade has been challenging. There was COVID, and now developers are having to deal with the power crisis.
Most of the equipment property developers use require electricity. The cranes, the lights, and the design of the building was made pre this excessive load shedding that we've had. So you've got to take into consideration that it does delay and increase project costs as a result of the amount of fuel you need to fill up the generators, because that was the only solution then.
Before COVID, the construction sector contributed over 4% to South Africa's GDP and employed over 1 million people. By the end of 2022, 93 construction companies had closed their doors. Thousands lost their jobs.
In terms of the commercial side, things are definitely on the more quiet side, resulting from slower economic activities. I mean, as you know very well, South African Reserve Bank has raised the interest rates, which has definitely had an impact on new builds, right? Projects are now a lot less feasible than they used to be from a commercial point of view.
But there are signs of a turnaround, with most industries looking at finding their own solutions.
As we've evolved, we've actually started investing into solar and batteries, which have been a lot more stable than using generators and petrol, and are a much more future-proof solution to load shedding. We are now required to be self-sustaining from not just the power, but from all types of utilities, so that we can ensure an uninterrupted service to our tenants and guests.
While the power crisis may have had a devastating impact on the construction industry, what it's also done is force developers to think out of the box. They're now incorporating renewable energy and new materials in their plans.
So if I give you this building as an example, we would have definitely looked into the new technology whereby the glass facade of the building would have had solar capabilities that would be able to power the development in the construction phase and in the operational phase once handed over by the construction company.
Inflation has been another challenge, pushing up the cost of materials and alternative sources of energy. On the upside, developers are going green and building environmentally sustainable.
And prolonged energy crisis in South Africa continue to affect different key development sectors, including the construction industry. And the report they are coming from the Rainbow Nation eventually bring us to the end of this news edition. But for more details on this and other stories, as always, as ever, you can visit on our website on Eyeafrica.tv. But for now, many thanks for the privilege of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and do have a pleasant evening. Bye for now.